They laughed before they ever fired a shot. Somewhere along the Eastern Front, German soldiers tuned their radios and heard a rumor that sounded almost insulting. A farm girl was hunting them, a woman, a sniper. They joked about it. They mocked it. War, after all, was a man's business. What they didn't know, what they would learn too late, was that this woman was already watching them through a rifle scope, calmly deciding who would live to see the next sunrise and who wouldn't. If you enjoy deeply human war stories like this, consider subscribing. In 1941, the world was collapsing into total war. Nazi Germany had launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history, smashing into the Soviet Union with confidence bordering on arrogance. Wehrmacht officers believed this would be a short campaign. The Red Army would break, Moscow would fall, and anyone who stood in their way would be crushed. Among the millions of civilians caught in that storm was a 25-year-old woman from Ukraine named Lyudmila Pavlichenko. She wasn't born a killer. She wasn't raised for war. She studied history at university. She liked literature. She worked part-time at a factory, but she also loved shooting, a skill she learned through Soviet marksmanship clubs, originally meant for sport, not survival. When the invasion came, Lyudmila didn't flee east like many civilians. She walked into a recruitment office and asked to fight. The officer behind the desk laughed and offered her a nursing position. She refused. She demanded a rifle. To test her, they pointed to two Romanian collaborators taken prisoner and told her to prove herself. Lyudmila raised the rifle. She didn't hesitate. 2 shots. 2 bodies fell. The laughter stopped. She was assigned as a sniper and sent to the front lines near Odessa. This was not the romantic sniper war of movies. It was mud, hunger, exhaustion, and fear that never slept. Snipers lived alone for days, sometimes weeks, crawling through corpses and rubble, waiting for a single breath, a single blink, a single mistake. Lyudmila learned quickly. She learned how shadows moved at dawn, how German helmets reflected light, how impatience killed. She learned that every pull of the trigger meant staring directly into the life she was about to end. The Germans, meanwhile, had no idea what was happening. Men began dying without warning. Officers fell mid-sentence. Machine gun crews collapsed before firing a shot. At first, German command blamed Soviet propaganda, exaggerated kill claims, invented heroes meant to boost morale. Then the numbers kept climbing. 50 confirmed kills. 100. 200. By the time Lyudmila's count passed 300, denial was no longer possible. German radio units began issuing warnings, not about artillery, not about tanks, about a woman, a single sniper believed to be operating in the area. German soldiers tried to lure her out over loudspeakers. They promised chocolate. They promised safety. Then they threatened rape and torture. Lyudmila listened in silence, unmoved, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. Moments like this changed history. Hit like, so this story reaches more people, but every hunter attracts hunters of their own. German command deployed elite counter-snipers, men trained specifically to kill people like her. This became a psychological duel measured in heartbeats. One mistake meant death. One twitch meant never seeing home again. Lyudmila outlasted them. One by one, she tracked and eliminated 36 enemy snipers, some of the best Germany had. Each victory came at a cost. Friends died beside her. She was wounded by mortar fire. The war aged her faster than time ever could. And then came the turning point. In 1942, Lyudmila was pulled from the front, not because she failed, but because she had become too valuable to lose. The Soviet Union sent her abroad, to the United States and the United Kingdom, as a symbol of resistance. She arrived in Washington, D.C., wearing a simple uniform. American reporters didn't ask about battles. They asked about makeup, about skirts, about whether she used lipstick in combat. Lyudmila stared at them and said, "I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The room went silent. She returned home a national hero, but she never returned to the front. The war continued without her rifle. The killing stopped, but the memories didn't. After the war, Lyudmila finished her education and lived a quiet life, carrying the weight of every life she had taken. Her story forced the world to confront an uncomfortable truth. Arrogance kills. Underestimating your enemy kills faster. and war does not care about gender, pride, or mockery. The Nazis had laughed at a farm girl. Then they warned entire units when she was nearby. Share this story with someone who thinks World War II outcomes were inevitable. And as the guns fell silent, one question remained: not how many she killed, but what it cost her to survive. Silence did not bring peace. For Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the end of active combat only stripped away the noise that had kept the memories at bay. When she returned to the Soviet Union, the crowds were enormous. Posters bore her face. Newspapers called her a legend. To a nation bleeding millions of lives, she was proof that survival and vengeance was possible. But heroism is a public performance. Trauma is private. At night, she replayed moments no parade could erase. The slow crawl through frozen earth, the ache of muscles locked in place for hours, the moment just before the shot, when time stretched, unbearably thin, and she was forced to acknowledge the humanity on the other side of the scope. Snipers don't fire blindly. They observe. They wait. They learn habits. Lyudmila knew which German officer smoked before breakfast, which machine gunner shifted his weight when tired. She knew these men as patterns, then ended them in a fraction of a second. That intimacy left scars no metal could cover. German records from the Eastern Front tell a quieter side of the story. Units reported sniper panic. Soldiers refused to raise their heads. Patrols froze in place. Entire advances slowed, not because of tanks or artillery, but fear. Fear of an enemy they could not see, could not predict, could not overpower. The Wehrmacht had trained for mechanized war. Blitzkrieg relied on speed, confidence, momentum. Snipers like Pavlichenko shattered all three. Every step forward became a calculation. Every pause felt lethal. The psychological damage spread faster than bullets ever could. German counter-snipers were instructed to study her methods. They failed because they misunderstood something fundamental. Lyudmila was not reckless. She was patient. She did not chase kills. She waited for certainty. In her words, "I never fired unless I knew." That discipline is what made her deadly, and what made her survivable. But survival carried its own punishment. After the war, Lyudmila rarely spoke about specific killings. When pressed, she redirected the conversation toward those who didn't come back. Friends whose names never appeared in headlines. Young men and women who froze in trenches or bled out in fields no one would ever visit again. She suffered from headaches, from sudden anger, from long stretches of emotional numbness. What we would now call post-traumatic stress was then simply endured. The Soviet Union celebrated victory, not vulnerability. And yet, her presence reshaped how war was understood. Before Lyudmila Pavlichenko, female combatants were treated as anomalies, propaganda tools, or desperate exceptions. After her, militaries could no longer pretend that courage, discipline, and lethality belonged to one gender. Her success forced institutions built on arrogance to confront reality. The irony never faded. The Nazis dismissed her because she didn't fit their worldview. They believed strength looked a certain way, sounded a certain way, moved a certain way, and because of that belief, hundreds of their soldiers never saw her coming. Leadership failure isn't always about bad tactics. Sometimes it's about imagination, or the lack of it. German command failed to imagine that the enemy could be smarter, quieter, more patient than their assumptions allowed. That failure cost lives. Lyudmila lived long enough to see the world change. She died in 1974, far from the battlefields that defined her youth. She left behind no memoir filled with glory, no celebration of killing, only a warning implied by her existence. War punishes arrogance. War exposes bias, and war remembers those who adapt faster than those who mock. In the end, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was not terrifying because she was a woman with a rifle. She was terrifying because she understood exactly what war demanded and paid the price without illusion. And somewhere beneath the soil of the Eastern Front, where laughter once echoed over open radios, the silence still answers back. For decades after her death, Lyudmila Pavlichenko's name drifted in and out of history books, often reduced to a statistic: 309 confirmed kills. The deadliest woman in World War II, a number impressive enough to shock and easy enough to misunderstand, because numbers don't explain what it means to lie motionless for days while ants crawl across your face. They don't explain the discipline it takes to let targets walk away because the angle isn't right. They don't explain the cost of surviving a war that demanded you become someone you never planned to be. To the Soviet state, Lyudmila was proof of resilience. To Nazi Germany, she became a warning whispered through radio static. To historians, she is often framed as an exception, a symbol rather than a person. But to understand her fully, you have to see the war through her eyes. She did not see herself as a hero. She saw herself as someone who responded when history forced a choice. When invasion came, she did not ask whether she belonged on the battlefield. She asked whether she could make a difference. And once she knew the answer, she never looked away from the consequences. The Eastern Front was not a chessboard, it was annihilation. Villages erased, civilians slaughtered, prisoners starved. In that environment, mercy was not a strategy, survival was. Lyudmila understood this with painful clarity. Her rifle was not driven by hatred, it was driven by responsibility, to the soldiers beside her, to the cities behind her, to a future that depended on stopping the advance by any means necessary. This is where the German miscalculation becomes clear. They believed morale came from superiority, from the idea that their enemies were inferior, weaker, laughable. That belief fueled early victories, and then it blinded them. When reports surfaced of a female sniper dismantling entire units, command dismissed it because it contradicted their identity. By the time they adjusted, it was too late. This pattern repeats throughout history. Armies fail not because they lack weapons, but because they underestimate the people holding them. Leaders fail not because they lack intelligence, but because they confuse confidence with truth. Lyudmila Pavlichenko exploited that failure with patience and precision. Her legacy is not about glorifying death. It's about confronting the reality that war rewards adaptability, not arrogance. That it strips away illusion and punishes anyone who clings to it. In her later years, she rarely smiled in photographs, not because she regretted defending her country, but because she understood something most never do. Victory does not erase what it takes to achieve it. She once said that every sniper lives with two lives, the one before the first kill and the one after. There is no bridge between them, only memory. And yet, history often prefers myth to memory. It prefers the idea of inevitability, that Germany was destined to lose, that the Allies were destined to win, that outcomes were fixed from the start. Lyudmila's story shatters that comfort. Her impact was not inevitable. It was earned through discipline, resilience, and an understanding of human psychology that her enemies lacked. She proved that a single individual, underestimated and dismissed, could slow an army built on certainty. The Nazis laughed at a farm girl because laughter was easier than reconsidering their assumptions. They stopped laughing when radios crackled with warnings. They stopped laughing when patrols refused to advance. They stopped laughing when fear replaced confidence. And long after the gunfire ended, that lesson remained. War does not care who you think belongs on the battlefield. History does not care who you mock. And survival belongs to those who see clearly and act decisively when others refuse to. Lyudmila Pavlichenko did not just change how the war was fought. She changed who history was forced to remember.